see. We have an interesting lecture this time. So let's see. Okay, and if you don't forget to mark your attendance on the shared spreadsheet. If yeah, I've seen some people I remember were here in some days, but who just forgot to mark their attendance. So please do that uh, shortly. Okay, so we have Soler, Terrence, Meyer, Tiffany, Kevin, Gates. All right. Okay, so last time, if you've watched or attended Wednesday lecture, we were talking about um, content analysis, uh, content analysis, and the application. What are the content analysis steps? So I found it like a better way in order to illustrate how content analysis is conducted. It's actually to show you an example of one specific article that employed all of the steps, and you see how they moved on from one step to the other, rather than just talking about the steps. So I hope that helped in illustrating the point and also showing what content analysis look like in a publication. And so if you follow that, then there are also some issues that you would understand that needs to be addressed. So whenever you're dealing with content analysis, as a researcher and even as a reader, as a critical reader who want to understand how the authors reach their conclusion and how they conducted their work. So there are four or like three, depending on how you want to count it, major issues that you need to look into. First one is the unitizing. The other one is the categorizing or categorization. And the third and fourth one are the standard for accuracy and standards for generalizability. So I'm going to go over them one by one. The first problem or the first issue we deal with in content analysis is called the unitizing. And if we remember, we said the units of analysis are like the small components that will of the population. There's the small parts that will go into the analysis that would be processed or analyzed. Right. So we take a large body of text and then we break into the units. And the question is, what are those units supposed to be? If they could be text, they could be pictures, could be anything. And so, yeah, suppose you are analyzing a political speech. Which elements in that speech you're going to apply your coding on? Because as you may know, in any public speech, specifically by politicians, not all the sentences might be relevant um, to your analysis or like would have any uh, specific meaning. Because we know in a speech we do a lot of and ands like that. And sometimes people get distracted and they talk about specific things or like the other incoherent words. So supposedly you're doing content analysis. Would you choose then just to look into full sentences and that's it and exclude incomplete sentences? Are you only looking into phrases and clauses related to the topics that are being investigated? So assuming, yeah, I'm looking into like debate performances by presidential candidates, and uh, we're looking into like three categories. So attacks, if the politician made an attack on another politician, verbal attacks, we mean defense, or like self praise. Okay, so those are three categories. But what if there are other parts that don't fall or don't relate to any of these threes, like side speeches, or like talking about side like issues or being like distracted. Uh, so that happens a lot. How would you deal with that? Okay. So it's a decision by the researchers that they have to take, and then they just justify why they took that decision, right? Another issue, right, also involved. So in a political speech, so this is not an article or an op-ed that a politician is writing. A speech has a verbal part and a visual part, or like a body language part. Body language, background, the themes like the podium. Would you analyze that as well or no? Or would you just look into the transcript? So those decisions you make as an analyst, right? And into what would count into your content analysis to begin with. And then we deal with the issue. So now assuming you agreed what we're going to analyze. So we're going to analyze only like full sentences, or we're going to analyze like full poses. What exactly are you coding or are you looking for in that text, or all those units of text? So there are different things or different layers we can look into, right? Uh, so we start from the most simple one. So let's say about the physical location or like the length. So assuming example, I'm an advertising researcher, and I'm interested to see how different brands choose to place their slogan in an ad poster. So do they place it on the top? Do they place it on the bottom? Left corner, right corner? Like where do they place it? And so this is like relatively easy, right? You want to see where something is. So you don't even need to know the meaning of the words, right? Like just, or like the images, just where are they located, right? You can also do analysis by looking into the presence or absence of specific words or phrases. So how many times, so let's say I'm analyzing ad posters from all the major orange juice brands, and I want to see which one of them invoke the word natural the most, okay? So how many times the word natural was mentioned? So you can apply that to posters, to articles, to Twitter posts, Facebook posts, Instagram images, etc. Right? So does that word appear or not? Uh, can I train an algorithm or a machine to do this job for me more efficiently? To look into the presence or absence of specific words. What do you guys think? Hmm. Can a computer know if a word exists or not in a body of text? Hmm. Let me ask you a different question. If I want to know, let's say, for instance, uh, how many times a word was mentioned on, let's say, Twitter, what would I do? Where would I go?
I think with Twitter, you could just type it in the search bar and it'll literally just pull up the word in every tweet that has the word in it.
Yeah, so the computer can generate how many times the word was mentioned. right, Michaela?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, yeah. So that was my point. Like we're talking like the absence or presence of a word, something even a machine can do, right? Like yeah, like you can train any software, like okay, how many times the word natural, and then it will give you all of the results, would count them uh, faster than any human can, right? Uh, then in content analysis, we get into like a new thing. So like mention of specific topics. So for example, what the source of the ingredients reference to or not, all right? So here we're not talking about specific words. We're talking about, let's say we're talking about ingredients or like a class of things, like the weather, for instance, the weather elements, or like the like national or like geographic origin. So is it like from California or from Florida or things like that? With those things mentioned. So here you might not be looking into specific words, but like a group of words or a cluster of words, the word that refer to ingredients. So you have to know what count as ingredients. So like things about the water, the fruit, sugar, etc., right? So you can see this one is a little bit more complicated than the second one, right? Because you still have to know the different meanings of the word to classify it. Okay. Um, then you can look also into like specific use of a narrative within the text. Um, so, for example, let's say we're analyzing speech, like to what extent do the political speeches invoke past tragedies? So either it's talking about like natural disasters, terrorist attacks, pandemics, right? Um, was like were those different things invoked? Okay, so you see then if it's done by a machine, it could be harder, right? It had to be, it's not now a word, it's not a group of words, but you have actually to understand what the speaker is saying in order to classify it. So your classification in here is dealing more with the meaning of the words. It's not about their location, it's not about how many times, but like you read full sentences, the full phrases, and you will see what they are referring to, right? Like what's the narrative being evoked from that piece. Okay, so it's like a tragedy, or like different things. Like it could be about past experience, right? But it's something that has to be inferred by the reader. And even you can go deeper than that, and you look for like major themes. That is to say, you look for meaning and symbols employed in a text, right? So what is like that like poster, that article, that speech is trying to say? Here and I give an example of hope. So a machine algorithm, like a computer, can identify if the word hope was mentioned here or not. Like we can detect letters, right? And where is it located? Like at the bottom, can tell me what the colors are. So here's like have baby blue, red, white, and like dark navy. But what does that imply? What do those colors, what is the theme of those colors? Those colors refer to what, or taken from, or inspired by what? Red, blue, and white.
The flag.
The colors in here in the Hope Obama posters. So the colors are inspired by what? What do these?
The American flag.
Yes, yes, the American flag. And you can answer that because you know the American flag, right? And you know the like the heritage, and you know who Obama is, and when was this? Maybe you know also when this poster was like published. So you have a frame of reference, and then you applied it into a piece of content you're analyzing. And you would see a problem then with content analysis is that because people come from different frames of references, not all people will get the same message from the same source equally. So you may get some parts, other person might get other parts. You might interpret things like differently than the other. What does hope mean? Why use of hope? Hope for what? It's interpreted via your own lenses. And so in content analysis, the more you go like into this one, your units then won't become specific words, but then you have to like analyze the text in its totality. So you're saying, for example, this full sentence or this full line, or sometimes this full paragraph, it's referring to what? Or invoking this specific theme. So like a theme of hope, or like a theme of tragedy, or a theme of fear. But that's then is has to be analyzed from like a personal, like a human, from a human perspective. Okay. And so yeah, once, so that's the idea of like when we move from something like into like more apparent into something more deep, we'll get into like personal interpretation. So that's the inferential part or inferential component of content analysis. So yeah, let's look at a few posters, assuming we're content analyzing them. For let's say you're analyzing anti-smoking posters. What are the things we will be looking at? So you can look into things like the visuals, right? So do they show cigarettes? Does the poster show cigarettes? Does it show like infected lung, or like someone coughing, or I don't know, like intensive care unit, right? Or like a heart rate like chart. So those could be just visuals, right? Or like look at the colors, or maybe but then if you're looking into the text or the messages, what are the messages trying to say? What's the appeal being employed in order to promote quitting smoking, right? Those then becomes like interpretive operations. You interpret the message before you're able to categorize it. Uh, so look here, these two posters. So let's start by here, this one. Um, this one here in the this one right here. Um, what is it referring to? What's the reference being used in this one here in the left?
The left side, is it like um the money or like the monetary value of like spending your money on cigarettes is a waste?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the appeal is don't waste your money, stop smoking, right? So yeah, so smoking wastes your money or burns your money. That's like the okay. That's the for instance being used. Okay. What about this one right here? On the right. What are they? What's the message being implied in here? What's being implied in the one on the right?
It's implying that smoking will kill you.
Right, right. So the message is about death, and do you understand? So what are the what's the elements? So what do you see? What does this scene reminds you of, or it's trying to symbolize what?
It's symbolizing someone committing suicide.
Right. Yeah. It's committed suicide. So you see like the angle looks like, yeah, the direction of the head, the chair right here. Yeah. So yeah, it is like smoking is suicide. So the appeal here is about life or death appeal. The appeal right here is about like the monetary incentive. So those two things we would call we will sort them into two different categories. But these two categories have to be inferred because they're more thematic. They were interpreted from how we read the symbolism of the message. They were embedded. They were not something apparent, right? And so that's what we mean by manifest content and latent content. Um, so a manifest content is something at the surface level that can be detected by direct observation. So for example, what color did that poster use? Or how many times that word was mentioned? Or did that poster use like a female character, a male character, or both? Or like, what was like the font? Things like that. Or like, what was the location of where that ad was shot? Like, was it like so something that you could just observe and report. Whereas latent content is an underlying meaning inferred from processing and dealing with the message. So something like you have to read, you have to understand the symbolisms. So like you understand the symbolism of the chair. You have to have like, so it's inference by a human reader, all right? So it's detected by interpretive acts. And the point is this distinction is important because content analyzing for latent content, you could figure out that easily now that would be more difficult than analyzing for a manifest content. Because for latent content, you get into like interpretations and people interpret things differently. And so for content analysis, you might see larger room for disagreements when your research question is dealing with latent meanings, that's the manifest meaning. So for another example, like, so look at this ad by White Claw. What does it mean? Can someone interpret this ad for me? What is White Claw trying to say with this poster? So White Claw, reward your passion, and then someone playing volleyball. What are they trying to say?
Maybe that it's like a more refreshing drink than like other like alcoholic beverages. Like it can be had in between like a day at the beach.
And why is that? What is unique about the White Claw product?
Um I don't know. I get it's light, I guess.
Yes, yes, yes. So can someone, I would guess everyone here, or like 90% of people are familiar with White Claw. So what is White Claw? You know what it is?
It's a hard seltzer.
Hard seltzer. And it's gained popularity because it has what? Or less of what? It has fewer what?
Calories.
It has fewer calories, right? It has fewer calories, and this right here, yeah, it's saying like it could be more refreshing, all right? Like what type of character they are employing in this poster? Who is she? What is she doing?
She's an athlete.
She's an athlete, right? And so athletes and low calories. You see the connection, right? Okay. So reward your passion. That means White Claw is meant for or deserved by whom?
Like maybe it's saying it's okay to drink it because it's like low calorie and it's okay to like reward yourself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so since you're playing sports and like you're burning enough, you should reward that by White Claw because yeah, it won't affect you. It's only like a 100 calorie a can. So the target audience here is for what type of people? People who are concerned with what?
Like their health and calories.
Yeah. So yeah, people concerned with fitness. So this type of ad has like that appeal to fitness needs, right? So assuming, for instance, we are content analyzing alcoholic beverages commercials or posters, we want to categorize to which type of appeals they're using. So here, obviously, White Claya is about like fitness, and others would be about like just the funness, right, of it, like something fun, or like the freshness. So you'd see like a beach and then like a piece of lemon, but like different appeals. And that's inferred bias. This is more like of a latent variable, like the message appeal is a latent variable. We do have many manifest variables. So these the women, yeah, like so that's like just a gender. They use different color. Is it colorful? Yes. So they use like a pink or a bright color. Those are like manifest things. Like you use the word passion or reward. You can count that if you're interested. But then, yeah, once you get deeper, so does this have also some sex appeal? You can debate that, right? Like, what do you mean by it? What's like the main message? Yeah, like we can infer that, and we could have different like disagreements. But because they're latent variables, there are no one right answers. There are different right answers. But the most important part is for the content analysis to specify explicitly what they meant by each categories they're using, right? So once you clarify that to the readers, they could then see it and then know how you arrive to your results. And so that's basically the main issues involved with content analysis. Like in order to know that you're reading good content analysis, so there are three major issues involved with content analysis that will affect the quality of the work. First one is the accuracy and efficiency of the coding scheme. Then we have the consistency of the coding process itself, and then the generalizability of the sample. And we're going to go over them one by one. So right here is the validity of the categories. That means, do the categories accurately and fairly reflect the content being analyzed? All right. Um, so when we say, for example, this is like a peer appeal, right? When I say peer appeal, does it accurately reflect the type of poster we saw earlier about like anti-smoking? Was that peer appeal? Would that word apply to the situation we saw, right? Or when you say like a beauty appeal, or when you say like a fitness appeal, that words reflect the content you're referring to. And so here, there's no one way to establish it. There are different ways. Sometimes it's the easiest when you're trying to reflect naturally occurring categories. So for instance, if you're saying, yeah, I'm categorizing content if the film or the ad showed straight couples, LGBT couples, or like a mixture of both, right? So these are something that like occur in society. I didn't have to establish them myself as a researcher. Also, if I'm looking into like male, females, others, those are like categories pretty well like exist, observable in nature. Yeah, like pets. If we're talking about like pets in ads, do they show dogs? Do they show cats? Do they show other pets? Or do they show more than one pet or type of pet or breed of pet, right? So, okay, that's like more natural. You can look at previously established categories. So we are analyzing, let's say, music in films. And music genres have already been established in other, like if you look into the music literature or music databases, they already have categories for music. you know, so like rock, jazz, pop, blues, country, etc. What genre of music are being employed in that show or this channel or that channel, etc. Right? Or like music and video games, what genres do they fall into? Okay, so that's like more like categories you can obtain from like someone else, or like even some conceptual categories. So researchers all the time do establish taxonomy of categories for like different appeals, right? So humor appeal, fear appeal, threat appeal, etc. You can use that. Or you can develop one yourself, right? So based on your own conceptualization, you can then say, for instance, here's how I think beer advertising promoted beer. And here are like the four major themes they use. And you explain each one, and it has to be reflective exactly of what you're trying to say. Right? So that's the one, just to validate if it's accurate. Then one big issue is like mutual exclusivity. And so when you say something is mutually exclusive, that means the one unit cannot belong to more than one category, right? One unit cannot belong to more than one category. Okay, so you have four different themes or four different categories. Each unit of analysis has to belong to one. So if you're analyzing political speech and you're saying it's an attack or a defense, one sentence, for instance, can either be an attack or a defense, but it cannot be both at the same times. Otherwise, you're not having good distinctive category or distinguishable categories. Your categories have to be very distinguishable, and like there are clear-cut boundaries between them. That point clear. So that's a good content analysis. If not, then your analysis is meaningless because the proportion that you report are not actually true. Because I can change where each unit belongs to because it can fit more than one category. So here, for example, look at this food pyramid right here. Okay. Do you think are the categories in the food pyramid, this food pyramid, mutually exclusive or not? Let me ask it another way. Can you think of a food item that can belong to more than one of these categories?
No,
Can you tell us why?
because each type of food, the way that they have it categorized, the codes only fit in one group, I think.
So you cannot think of any food item that might belong to more than one. You might think about things you have in the fridge, things you have in the counter. Can you find any food item that might belong to more than one category from here?
I can't think.
Okay, I'll give you examples. So I have milk chocolate. Where would that belong? Or chocolate milk? Where would I put chocolate milk?
It could belong in both the sweets and the dairy categories.
Yeah, all right. Okay, yeah, I have chocolate milk. It could be sweets, or it could be milk. Okay. You see here meat substitutes, right? What are meat substitutes made of? Do you know?
It could be made of like soy or also vegetables.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So if I have meat substitutes that are made out of vegetables, yeah, like yeah, because that's the thing. Yeah, I have. You can different examples. So I have a raisin muffin, right? So raisin technically fruit or coming from a fruit, and it's made of grain, and it's sort of like a sweet or a dessert, right? So where would that belong, right? They actually like can come up, and even here, like the candy bar, so like if like chocolate is made out of milk in most cases, right? Yeah, and like there are multiple things that you could think of. Like so here, like they're talking about specific ingredients, right? Um, but once you hear like they have like fats, oil, and sweets, so yeah, it's like it's complicated things and like adding meat stuff. So yeah, for like they are good in general, but if you think they're not really mutually exclusive. If you're talking about components, though, specific ingredients, so if you're just having carbs, sugars, fat, what's the third one? Fourth one, sorry. Sugar, fats, and vitamins, then yeah, you just talk about the elements. And so whatever food has multiple, that's fine. But your unit of analysis would then be the elements, not the food ions itself. Okay. And then you can, yeah, like, and so we said they have to be mutually exclusive. So they have to be accurate, mutually exclusive, and then exhaustive. So the categories basically cover all of the units in your analysis. All right. So in your categories to be efficient, no case. So I would say almost no case, but cases should always find a category to belongs to. If the categories that you created does not cover the varieties that you have in your sample, that means you're missing some categories, or that your categories are not good enough, right? So I am basically thematically analyze beer commercials or alcohol commercials, and I came up with three categories. My three categories should take into account like or should cover like 99.9% of all the beer like alcohol commercials. But if like 10% of the commercials don't belong to any of the categories I created, that means I haven't created like sufficiently enough categories. So you see that that's what you mean by exhaustive, that they could cover every, I won't say every single case, but almost every single case in the sample. And finally, that you have an efficient number. So you don't have too many or too little, right? They have large enough to be exhaustive, but small enough also to be meaningful, yeah, or like to have mutual. Because if you're having too many, yes, you could have mutual exclusivity. You could have like exhaustive categories. Mutual exclusivity would be harder because then you'll be like very, 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 very specific. That some you'll find some items falling into more than one, and also it's not manageable to run. If I have too little, let's say here I I could categorize them, you know what, food items that have sugar and food items that don't have sugar. That pretty much covered everything, right? Because it's binary. But how would that be useful for my analysis? So think of it like if my research question, for example, is about what type of foods is being portrayed in TV shows for kids, all right, or like children like show or programs, and it's only like items with sugar, items no sugar. How would that going to accurately reflect the variety from C? Because yeah, if they see a hamburger, different than when they see like a broccoli. But I categorize them as like non-sweets. They all equal, right? So yeah, it is technically mutually exclusive and exhaustive, but is it helpful or meaningful? That's the question.
So I have a
yeah,
question. Okay,
sure.
so basically, depending on the type of research we're doing, like for the food pyramid, we could go into like gluten-free and then like with sesame seeds, without sesame seeds, and then it's just you not to do too many categories, but not to do oversimplify, or like, is it better to have more or is it better to have less?
It's better to have the numbers that could sufficiently answer your question, your research question. And I like the example you gave. So suppose you and I are running a research saying, do the campuses or the campus cafeterias in San Diego have enough items for the gluten-free customer base, right? So to answer our question, we only need two categories, like gluten-free, non-gluten-free. So we go to the menus of like the criteria of like USD, UCSD, San Diego State, all the others. We just take all of these items and see like which one has like the highest percentage of gluten-free items, right? So that just perfectly answered our question. We're not interested into like low sodium or like kosher or like dairy or dairy-free, whatever. We just want to answer that question. And just having two categories is enough for us. If we want to expand and like if it like answers or cater to all of the health restriction, then we can, yes, do like soy, and we do another variable of like vegan, etc., right? So as long as the categories you have are sufficient enough to answer your research question, then you should not go over that number. Okay.
So basically, really important to understand the question that we're asking so that we get the correct data.
Yeah.
Okay, first, I would think
Yeah,
opposite. I would probably get the data and then separate. But it makes sense better to know what I'm looking for.
Exactly. There's no count analysis without knowing what you're looking for. Like, what are the units? What are you going to analyze in the first place? And also, what are the variables? Because the variables would determine the number of categories you should have. Yeah, so a question here. So looking into like the census, so I'm sure you felt, I hope you felt the census last year. So are the racial categories by the US Census exhaustive or not? So we have them right here. So yeah, here. So we have white non-Hispanic, black non-Hispanic, Hispanic, Asian or Pacific Islander, or American Indian, like or Native American. Are those categories exhaustive or not?
No.
So who are we missing in here?
A lot of people.
Such as like who?
People of mixed race.
Yeah, that's the most obvious one. Like, yeah, mixed. Yeah, so there's no like, yeah, mixed race. It's not, it doesn't appear in here. Who else?
People of Middle Eastern descent.
Yes. So yeah, a lot of people actually. So people of Middle Eastern descent, West Asia. So if someone is from Armenia or like Persians, we have actually plenty of those in California. Where would they place themselves? And it actually goes to the exhaustiveness and accuracy. Can be white, but socially, are they white? Or by white, we mean very specific things, like we actually mean European. And when we say Asian, so in the United States and every society for that matter, when you say Asian or any other like specific word, you mean like specific ethnicities that come to mind. So you mean like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, etc., etc. So you could have Asian, you can also include South Asians. Yeah, but people from the Middle East or West, yeah, they're technically in the continent, but is it something they label themselves with? Like, is it a word they use to refer to themselves, right? So that's, yeah. And when you say Hispanic, who are we missing from Latin America when you say Hispanic?
Well, that one I would think like Afro Latinos.
Well, what do they speak though? It depends.
Oh, well, I mean, there's some that speak English, some that speak Spanish, some that
Yeah.
speak Portuguese, some that
Yeah.
speak whatever.
Yeah. So if I'm Haitian, if I were Haitian, right. So they don't speak Spanish. Technically from the Caribbean. So technically also black, are they non-Hispanic? If I'm Brazilian, for instance, for you, you're Brazilian. So if you're Brazilian, you're Latin American, but you're not technically Hispanic, so you just answer. So yeah, the definition of the words, yeah, you could be, yeah, you can have more, like you can have broader categories, right? So you say Caribbean or Latin American, so that broaden your definition, right? Um, or so you have mixed, or always have non-listed or other, and that will get you covered, right? Once you have other, so you can make the point like, yeah, we covered the like 90% of the people with these categories, or 95, and the 5% we can just have others, and that will pretty much cover everybody. So this one here example for like what a coding scheme looks like. Let's see how much time we have. Okay. So this was from a study by Dixon, who's a famous scholar actually at UCLA, and he's looking into like representation of crime and race on TV news. And this is from an analysis he made where he looked into how the race of like the officers, the perpetrators, and victims of crime are represented in local TV channels. So notice here he has many unitizing decisions that differ based on the variable. So here, 1 year of analysis, he looked into the TV station. So it's obviously all the local channels right here. So they weren't looking into the content here, just the TV station. In which TV station did this news piece was aired, right, broadcasted? Then the crime location, he was also only interested if it's local or non-local. So you see right here, it's binary, because that was his research question. To what extent, like the TV channels in LA cover crimes that are local versus non-local, right? And then the character, here you get to look at the content of like, or the characters being represented. So the characters, he covered like the race and or ethnicity of the officer, the perpetrator, or the offender, or the victim. And so they were categorized as like white, African American, Latino, or other, right? So yeah, so that, and then the crime type. The interesting thing about the crime type, like you can get this from the database of the police because they already have clearly defined crime categories. So he just used that. Sometimes you find something that's already established and you use it. But look at the, I want to ask you a question here. Look at the characters. So in a crime news story, so he's interested to see which ethnicities are more associated with being police officers versus being associated being like a crime perpetrator versus being associated as crime victims. So he has those three. So do you think those three are mutually exclusive? So you have officer, perpetrator, or a victim. Do you think they are clearly defined? Do you have clear boundaries between one and the other? Police, offender,
Yes, unless the policeman is the offender.
Right. Okay. Unless the policeman is the offender, but then right. Then it would be yeah. Are they exhaustive though? Are they exhaustive? Are there other characters in a crime scene that may not fall into any of these three categories?
Like medical workers?
Okay, medical workers, right? Okay, medical workers. And when a news station goes to cover a crime scene, they do what? Or when you see a crime scene in a TV show or like a TV series or a movie, so you have the criminal, you have the victim, you have the police, and you have crime scene, TV, reporting, interviewing whom?
Witnesses?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you go into the crime scene, of course. Yeah. You're gonna interview witnesses, special TV channels, right? They show witnesses. I'd say it's an interesting research. It's not, you don't have to know the specific of this research, but I'm just giving you an example. It's an interesting research because Dixon was interested to see if the proportionality of representing Black and Latinos are as criminals reflect the actual reality. And so there are high likelihood of Black and Latinos being represented as perpetrators, even giving accounting for the actual numbers, right? So in other words, if we have 30% of the police force are Black and Latinos, we should see 30% of police officers on TV being Black and Latino. Um, that was not the case, by the way. Like, you can read the paper; it's available. But that was not the case. So they find actually most of the time on TV, like news reporting, most of the police officers that were interviewed or featured were white, whereas most of the perpetrators were like Black and or Latino, higher than their proportion in the police records themselves. And so that was the key. So he compared the content he and his team found in the content analysis to the actual actual numbers of like crime reports, right? And so then we get into like coding reliability, and we only have so it's about like the consistency in unitizing and categorization, and we talked about this before. So it refers to what extent do two raters agree on the categorization or sorting of one unit, right? So if me and Evelyn, for example, like in most of the cases, we agree that this is murder or they're talking about burglary, right? So this we have an agreement because and the more agreement we have, the more reliable your coding is because more than one person agreed that it belongs to this category. So you didn't made it up. You didn't make it up, basically. Um, this can be established via like intercoder reliability, which is a high level of agreement between more than one coder, so two, preferably more than two even. You can have 7 coders, so if they agree, it's fine. You can have machine assistant coding. So it's specifically if you're not looking for like deep meanings. And by the way, with artificial intelligence, you could still even look into deep meaning with algorithms with a high level of accuracy. But like if you're looking at surface level things, like a mention of a specific hashtag or like an image or like a specific words, you can use that and then you'll establish the consistency. Especially like, the computer found that There's no way that I subjectively changed the proportions. And then what increases the likelihood of interpreter reliability is that you have precise operational definition for your coding scheme, right? So if you are here for the crime type, you should define what an arson is. You define what a burglary is. Would you define what prostitution is explicitly? That's the key word, explicitly. And so whenever someone is analyzing the same content, they should arrive at the same categorization, right? So with good and precise coding scheme and good training, so the coders that you're working with are well trained into that. Like they tried multiple times unless they reach a high level of familiarity until, I mean. And finally, the generalizability of the findings, which is about if the sample you draw from the population of the content representative of that whole content. So it does the sum represent the whole. So that's why it's called sample to population validity. So is your sample representative enough? And that's being done by drawing what we would call the random sample. That is to say, you did not cherry pick different context. You did not cherry pick specific news story. You did not cherry pick specific articles. You did not cherry pick specific pictures from Instagram account. Those were drawn with no particular order. So like a random 1,000 post from that Facebook account, and they had no specific order whatsoever. So they would be representative of the whole. And you have a larger sample size. If you have a large sample size, you're more likely to represent the whole. Final question. So if I sample, let's say I'm analyzing a newspaper, and if I sample only the front page stories, will my sample be representative of the whole population of stories in that newspaper?
No.
No, because
Maybe like front page headlines are more likely to be like something that's very like the biggest story of the day and like something
that's exactly right. So then I'm just sampling the biggest story of the day, and I'm ignoring all of the other things that the newspaper is covering. So you cannot say this content is representative of what the story of the newspaper or the organization as a whole is covering. I can say it's representative of what the front page stories are, right? This is what New York Times puts. This is the type of content New York Times or LA Times puts in its front page, but it doesn't represent the full variety of content within that newspaper. So yeah, that's it for today. Next week, we're going to talk about more applications of content analysis for practical purposes. And we will do some practice, actually. You're going to practice content analysis yourself. Any questions? All right, then. So enjoy the rest of your day or your weekend, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
had one question. I just had one question.
Let me start.